Rules. This is the late Gamer 1745 here. Not as in that I've died, but that I'm late starting. Yes, I know. Checking to see now that I'm live on the interwebs. It looks like it. Am I live on YouTube? Yes, I am live on YouTube as well. Very good. Very, very good. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm late. I'm sorry, Arno and others. We'll give you a few minutes to show up here before we continue. I just, I'm sorry about being late, guys. I know there are a few people who actually pay attention and want to be here for this, and all that. I just can't get to sleep. And when the alarm went off, I woke up for it, but oh man, I just knew I needed to take time, a little bit more sleep to be able to get here and entertain you. So, like I say, I'm sorry, but we're here. As Dan said over on Discord, better late than never. Yes, and that is quite true. If you haven't already, check out our Discord server. It's hovering just below 300 people. It's been that way for a year or more. We have some very interesting topics come up that people talk about. Sometimes historical, sometimes modern events, sometimes just, events in our lives and not big things out in society, just what's going on with our lives. So yeah, do check that out as well. All right, so okay, we're playing, yes, Master of Command. Been enjoying this game. I've actually held off playing it too much, a little bit, but too much on my own, just saving the exploration for these live streams. All right, so we need to secure 5 battlefields before this bar goes all the way across. There is time. There are things that we can do to delay movement on it. But let's see what's going on here. All right. Sir, amongst the thickets east of the field, our scouts have discovered a wounded officer evidently left behind in our allies' retreat. His uniform and bearing suggest a man of rank. He is conscious, though greatly weakened. If we possess medical stores, he may be restored to strength without delay. I am so glad I live in this relatively modern age, not have to rely upon 18th century medicine. Oh boy, so glad about that. There's a lot of things I really like about the 18th century. Some things I think I would be very comfortable with. Other things, I don't know how obviously if I grew up in it, it's what I would know. I don't know how much our personality, and I do believe a significant amount of our personality, isn't just environment or taught to us in schools or by our families. I think there's inherent both individual elements to our personality that are inherent to us as well as general, human traits. Humans, and of course, I'm living in the second half of the 20th century and the first part of the 21st century, already a quarter of the way into that. And in the Western world, but even we have this ideology of equality. And I say the ideology of equality, and I don't just mean, equal before the law, which is sort of a United States kind of thing, meaning, you know, jury trials. Oh, they're giving those up, I hear, in Britain pretty soon. Just one of the places where they started jury trials. Yeah, that's what happens when you let these nut jobs run governments. But and all that. But I mean that we're all like somehow inherently equal, and we're ideologically have been programmed to believe that. But our senses, at least the five commonly. And hello, Jemnuska and Arno, all both on Twitch and YouTube. Sight, smell, taste, touch, these kind of senses tell us that we're not equal. Obviously, some of the obvious ones, that we're not equal is sporting events. Because it's sure at the top end of the athlete spectrum of it. There's, people are running a race or lifting weights or whatever. There's barely any difference, but that's the sort of elite level of athletes. But we just look at general humanity, and there's great variances within that. And if we look at various ways of looking at smartness and whatnot, we see that we're also very much not equal to each other. No, it is not just, and I really see this as an individual thing. It's not just, oh, hey, how well educated you are. That's again this sort of ideology, this sort of belief that we're all just blank slates, and if we're programmed the same, we'll all be the same. And if we just go through the schools and apply ourselves with proper effort, we'll all be relatively, the same. No, we're not. So if you were to take me today, or me when I was 20 something, and throw me into the 18th century, I'm sure I would have a difficult time settling into their hierarchies and how they develop their hierarchies. But humans are naturally hierarchical. Now, that doesn't mean, again, cross particularly cultures. And those who have watched a lot, I know I should be playing here, but just getting my engine started this morning. Those who have known me, I'm a culturalist. I believe the major differences between groups of humans, like I've just been talking about individuals, but groups of humans, the main difference is culture. And that is obviously influenced by your environment. but it's not something that is just taught in a classroom. It's every moment of your life observing people and things. So, um, you know, your culture is very important to understanding that. But so beyond, but I do believe the 18th century, the 18th century is the old world. The 19th century is starting of this revolution in humanity. Now, we are still going through the revolution in humanity. Um, the and this isn't a revolution like the Bolshevik Revolution or the French Revolution, though they are symptoms of it. Um, because there's those are political and or cultural revolutions, but there are I was going to say, because it's a common term, the industrial revolution, but really it's the technological revolution, and we are still going through this technological revolution, and it's why I'm late this morning. Everything comes around to what's going on. In the 18th century, you got up with the sun and you went to bed with the sun. Now, obviously, that's not 100% true, and poor people did have light at night, but the amount of light and the type of things that you could do with the light that you had were limited. As I forget when relatively recent uh, YouTube channel that talks about very ancient humanity, um, and he talking about fire and how fire, extended the day but created what he called the classroom. I think this was his term, and that people sitting around a fire talking at night. Yes, because you can't really go out and farm at night. You can't really do, you can't build a building at night for most people most of the time because there just isn't enough light. If you've ever gone camping, which everyone should, just to experience it, not that you should love it or do it a lot, but you should know the basics of it. Um, a fire gives you sort of light, but try to read by a fire. How can you do that? Because the fire is down on the ground, and you can sit there and look at it. But if you open a book and look at the book, you can't. It's not really easy to read because the book itself is blocking out the light from the fire. You need like a candle, or in the 18th century, a lantern that you put sort of behind you to then, bounce some light off the book. So yes, you can read at night, you can talk around at night, but try to do a lot of work at night. You need a lot more light. Where coming in the 19th century, late 19th century, of course, but you start to get much brighter light at night. You to the point that it's first with gaslight that can light things up. And there's a great series called Connections that really talk about how technological development happened and the types of light. But gaslight and then into electrical light that could allow 24/7 production of weaponry or something like that during World War One. And modern day farming can be done 24/7, in the sense um, of so easy to light what you're doing. And so sleeping habits, information habits. When I was young, I knew a lot about computers, at least home computers, personal computers. There were, big mainframe computers, which there still sort of are. Um, but, big mainframe computers, which I never really had any real interaction with. But you could go to one place and walk around and see just about everything going on, literally speaking, everything going on with what we would call, personal computers. There was computer conventions, and I was able to go to those as a kid. Like 13, 14, that kind of age. Not like 5 or 6 or something like that, but a bit older, and walk around and get an overview. I didn't technically know everything, but get an overview of everything that's going on. And this was before color monitors, literally before color monitors. There was just black and white, green and white, and then briefly came out, well, not black, or green, not green and white, green and black, sorry. And then briefly, they came out with orange and black. That was a fad for about a year. And that was it. There was no color, literally no color. There was, you could have one color, whether it was white or some other color. And you could walk around and do that. Now, today, computing, and not just, again, big data centers, big mainframes, big servers, big AI, things that most people don't interact with. But our phones, our tablets, our PCs, our Xboxes, all of this, there's just so much, our fucking refrigerators, that are computerized, everything with a compute system in it. There's just too much for one person to have a good grasp of what's going on. And so this is the human revolution, And so humans are needing to evolve, whether physically, and that very well may be happening physically, or just socially, or structurally, or behaviorally. That may be the good term. We're needing to evolve to handle all of what's going on. And when I say physically evolve, I don't know that we're going to, get an extra finger to type with faster, or we're going to lose our legs because we just sit in one place all the time and, interact with the computer and don't need to move around or something like that. I don't know that we're going to do that. But I think our brains work differently, especially I understand parents and people worrying about their children becoming too addicted to, and I'm sure some do, um, the computer. When I say that, I mean, whether it's the phone, because people, the phone, that symbol, it really used to be just a analog instrument that had zero microchips in it that you literally, I mean, even before my time, but it was even more primitive, but that you would pick up and you would use a rotary, and that those clicks as it goes back sent a signal to early computer type things, analog computers in a lot of cases, maybe electronical, but analog type computers that would say, oh, they're dialing a particular number, and let's connect that number. So you didn't have to have a person early on. It was literally the phone operator was a person that would physically connect you through various connections. But yeah, a phone was just an instrument to call somebody else and then have an analog conversation with them. So I do think growing up, our brains will, as we're dealing with this stimulus, our brains will restructure themselves. That isn't necessarily evolving, that's just adapting to the world. But that then, as generations go on, I think it may become evolutionary. So, yes, we are going through a revolution um, of how to deal with this modern world. And for everyone, people who are embracing it and people who are resisting it, short of a catastrophic event that's very, very negative for humanity, there's no going back. There's no going back. There's only forward. So, and this gets to this. We don't have 10 to the officer's wounds has doctrine field hospital or sanitary conditions. So this is all getting to what my monologue here. No one's interacting or commenting on what I'm saying. That sanitary conditions, the idea that you should wash your hands between dealing with different patients, wasn't even a real thing, even a thought of thing. Um, Field hospitals, yeah, you know, get the bone saw and whatnot. So, or pray for, and I don't want to make little or light of, because different, if you use certain words, people are sometimes positively triggered by it, but negatively triggered by it as well. I do think there, and I know some people, again, that's really come down into this modern world that we are infected by, that everything is simply mechanics. Everything. There is nothing beyond mechanics, meaning life itself is nothing. We are nothing but a biological machine, and there's nothing more to that. There's no, and I could use terms like higher power, but or the soul or whatever, but that there is only what the, again, going back to the five senses can see. I think, again, if we look around, if we observe the world, we can see that there is more to it than that. Now, I do think people often jump to easy um, formulas, which we can call belief systems or whatever. Jump to that. No, it's whatever sort of religious kind of thing. It's just that. I think that's as much us with our limited abilities trying to interpret things that we can't um, easily put into words, easily put into ideas that are transmittable. And I'm far, far, far from being able to even start to um, start to um, explain or understand or transmit, any sort of the ideas beyond it. But the point is, these people in the 18th century, yeah, sure, there were atheists, but it was like you go to, and somebody pointed out years ago, so I don't know, one of the websites for like one of the flat earth societies. People all over the globe are joining our organization. Flat Earth Society using like, or all around the world, or whatever. I forget the exact words they used. Somebody screenshotted the thing, but either using the word like globe, which means round, or around the world, which means again around. So even these people that, and I think some people genuinely want to believe that the world is flat, want to. Others are just memeing, if you will. I think a lot of people back then who wanted to convince themselves that they were atheists, but they did in some way or another believe in things beyond our normal experience. So Bonesaw, which I don't know, somebody weak, I don't know if that matters here or if it's just this. So the way we interact with the world is significant. So we will pray for him. And he didn't make it. Okay, so he didn't make it. Well, we've got another battlefield down here. We've got a fair amount of food. Food is the one, this clock doesn't start moving until you tell it to do something. So let's go down here. And now we're unpaused. Okay. Okay, just in time. Your Grace. And here again, the lack of equality that I'm not saying we should go back to these types of things, but they're not wrong on, if you will, the flip side or the others, because using a term like your grace or something in hierarchical. Now, it's, and we still use some of it, like your honor for a judge. Because we still have vestigial elements of this. But, and if we really understand all of this, if we really look at it, it's not like, oh, you have to call somebody your grace. I'm not exactly sure in the English sense just what levels of titles that is. I do believe in the Church of England that is a certain level of church person as well, but like your honor of a judge, it's not like, oh, that person, often male, but not always, is somehow better than me, and I must give them a special honorific that reconfirms their superior position to my lowly position. And this is where I think a lot of our modern ideological ideologies push us into, and is a detriment to society. Because when you refer now, I'm individuals, again, can be evil and corrupt no matter what's going on around them. But when you say something like Your Honor to a judge, you're reminding that judge. Now, again, I think, especially in the leftists, ideologicalists, and yes, I'm referring to lefty Democrat appointment judges, to also people that fulfilled judge type roles in the Bolsheviks and the USSR through it, even in the sort of post Bolshevik USSR, left gets that whole spectrum. Their sort of cynicalness, their belief structure sort of wrecks a lot of this. But you were working under the presumption that your judge, the person that's both judging the situation and presiding over the trial, the court case, the whatever, has honor. Okay? That they are going to have honor and going to fairly judge both, or judge, and it's judge, are these people telling the truth? Do they have good points of law? Are they, what are the facts? As in, like, if somebody brings in evidence, how much do you weight all this stuff? If somebody has honor to do it honestly and not like a lefty often will do, what's in the best interest of society? Meaning, maybe Derek Chauvin, the guy who supposedly put his knee on somebody's neck, he definitely put his knee on the guy, most assuredly, that supposedly killed him. Well, it was all the drugs that he had taken just prior to it that's what killed him and what made him couldn't breathe. And he was just holding this guy down, and this guy was sort of asking, get me out of this car, I need to breathe, help me, And so this guy, who was trying to keep somebody, say, flailing around and hurting themselves, trying to hold them in place. And he's still in prison, people. He did nothing wrong. He is in prison because a judge and prosecutor believed it is best for society that this one man is in prison to keep riots from happening and other people dying. So we're denying justice to a police officer because he did not kill. Other than confronting a person and the person panicked and instead of wanting to be caught with the drugs, ingested the drugs into him. So accidentally, yes, maybe killing himself, but he is not responsible for this person dying in any way, shape, or form, and he is still sitting in prison at this moment because a few people believed that by putting him in prison, we would lessen the damage to society because it's social justice. Social justice and justice are two diametrically opposed things. And quite likely, back in the 18th century, they had social justice as in not equal justice. See, there's justice or equal justice, meaning each person is judged as an individual for whatever thing they're being judged upon, whether it's a beauty contest or a crime. Did they commit it or not? And if so, what should be their penalty for it? But based upon what categories that person fulfills, could be somebody who is seen as a benefactor to society, so we need to judge them more leniently than somebody at the lower orders who, if they get out of control, if they think that they can get away with stuff, they'll run riot. So they may be judged harsher, the lower orders judged harsher than the higher orders in society. So that is a type of social justice. So social justice goes against the idea of individual or equal justice based upon the facts. But by referring to a judge, Your Honor, you're trying to remind that person that you should have honor and you should behave that way. So, often, at least in America and whatnot, they'll often, like an announcer or something will say, "Ladies and gentlemen." Okay. And we've come with the myth that ladies go first before men. That's not, because if they were to say it properly, it'd be lords, ladies, and gentlemen. Lords and ladies were a particular social status. And then there were gentlemen that were not titled, wasn't a baron or a baroness, or because that would be like a lady or whatever, it would be a baroness, weren't titled people, but were just, a gentleman kind of thing. So it's normally the male was coming first, and then the female, and then maybe or maybe not including more lesser folk. But because, hey, you always want the rich folk coming to your performances or whatever, because they're likely to be your patrons. And the people in the cheap seats, well, they had to pay for the privilege of just even arriving here. So, who cares about them? But you're sort of reminding someone to be a lady, to behave in a proper manner. So titles are not just, "Hey, I'm superior to you over the people below you." It's up and down. It's a social contract, if you will, and that's, our society's organic or social contract. But whether it's organic or social contract, either way, you're reminding the people of their roles, that they're supposed to, whether, again, to be like Your Honor, to judge a case, or lady, well, to behave well and maybe, or, refer to somebody sir or whatnot, to maybe give a better tip, maybe, whatever, in various ways to behave. So the idea of your grace or whatever, yeah, it's hierarchical, but it's not wrong. It's not just that. Okay, so the column has arrived upon the flank of a friendly force who now prepares to launch a final assault on an enemy position. They have requested men to aid in their attack. We may furnish them with reservists as we see fit. Should they succeed, we shall be entitled to a portion of whatever is taken in the assault. So we can commit some reserves, 580. We have 2,171, or we can do 800. So we'll do this. We should get some of our people back. 318. Our detachment on the formed the friendly flank and went into there. So we will get $60 in loot. 3 weapon items and recover 370 reservists. So we are back there. We have Delft muskets. Don't know what those are. Don't know the term. And we get socket bayonets. Right. Okay, so now we need to go into camp here. We need to check out. Okay, so these guys, they have worn out muskets and bayonets. These guys also have worn out muskets and bayonets. So what we're going to do is give these guys that. And we can see here the stats, 16, 136. And so, well, actually these things here are slightly less accurate. 135, so they're greater range. 33 seconds reload versus 30, so these are faster reload. 3 versus 1 and whatever that lightning thing is. Not quite sure what that means. But yeah, they have poor accuracy, which I don't particularly like. And they're much better at bayonet fighting, so okay. So I guess these are an improvement, but they're not quite weapons I would want to see. So we'll see about changing them out if we get our options for better. I do like the Potsdam, which is a arsenal in Prussia. We have 20 accuracy versus 16, so it's more accurate. 36 reload, 30 reload, so 125 range versus 100. Whatever that little lightning bolt symbol means, I don't know. 6 versus 3 and 10 versus 7. So these are definitely in here. Okay, so we've increased our ability. So we're going to, I saw up there a garrison, our outpost. We need to reinforce at least 4 of them. Oh, we got some bad guys here. Let's have a battle. They outnumber us by considerably. Oh, shit. Okay. Oh, good. We can come in here. Okay. We need to... For the battle. To these guys. We needed to do this. Oh, boy. Should have done this long before. Okay. So we are now, for our small unit, we are now fully up to standard. Let's also look here. Are we fully equipped everybody what we can? Okay, let's go back. Okay, let's see if we can win this. Okay, so we need to use everything we can to deal with this larger force than ours. They've got skirmishers, they've got artillery. We don't have either of those. They've got line regiments equal to our own in number, at least. Okay, so we're going to use the river over here as our flank. So let's get our Prussian dragoons over here. Get them ready to move on to... Nope, that's the wrong... I guess we didn't get clicked onto the right unit. I wanted these guys. There we go. Okay, we want these guys to move around. I don't know that we... Well, at least we have ammo here. Okay, so... we will put these in line with this river here. Right. Even though we upped it, we still we can see here the size of these forces are not. I did not handle this well. So, okay. Hopefully our command influence will be good, and it was that. Come up and anchor these guys. Here. Musketeers, we're going to come up and use this fence. Now, our one real hope here, these guys that we're see if we can come and get into the enemy's rear. So, can Gamer beat the enemy AI? Okay, well, they are already reacting to these guys out here, which is good. We can move a significant portion of their force away from this action. Artillery is not really affecting us too heavily, and unfortunately these guys, in my opinion, fire way too soon, and I don't know of a way to make them not. They're very small in force, so they're not going to stand up to any real direct combat with these in the frontal sense. So our best thing we can do is neutralize some of the front by distracting them. Concentrate on. Outside of their range of fire. Good, we got a 2-for-1 fight there. 2 against 1. Taking fairly heavy casualties. I'm going to try to move them into the rear of this artillery and take out the artillery unit. They're already falling back. Whether they were planning a bayonet charge or just close in musketry, I'm not sure. These guys aren't doing well versus them. Okay, now I want you to move up like that. Keep pressure on these guys that are falling back. Since you guys just shot, I want you to move up like this. There are our horses. Concentrate on that. These guys up here just realized that they are about ready to be attacked. So let's attack them before they can really devastate them. These guys are coming back into action here. These guys are now charging. Hopefully they'll jump the fence. They're shattered even before the charge comes home. Fight these guys. Into their rear. Their rear. These guys are still looking at. They're retreating. Very good. So our dragoons, well, they're doing pretty well. They've shattered, so yes. And but keep putting pressure before these guys get a chance to come into the fight. Okay. The chasseurs, or the skirmishers, these guys here need to reface to deal with the guys that we've been leading around. You come up like this. And they're shattered. So you guys also come up over like this. And we won. Wow. I'm surprised that we did as well as we did. I pushed into that way unprepared. Okay, we got more money and some more goodies. Heavy jackets, boots. Okay. And we need people more than we need anything else, I think. So, casualties restored and additional reservists. Okay, so well, these guys. We turn them into Prussian musketeers. These guys ammo. Okay, so we're now properly reinforced. Okay, now, since we still have a fairly small force here, we're going to spend some of our Thowlers. Okay, these guys with inaccurate muskets, we could use some improved accuracy. That would be good. Okay, well, step horses, those will be better for lighter heavy jackets. Okay, melee damage down at 15%. 10% attrition at negative 30, but less stamina. So, but we'll do this because these guys here, we've already increased their one slot, so this is just for 50. We'll increase that and put there. And boots, movement speed. Get movement speed down or up. And here, speed. Okay, let's see if we can add this. There we go. There we go. So we've now improved our 4 regiments, battalions, whatever. Okay, and we can improve our officer here. We can skip this if we don't like any of these, but he currently has marching and whatever these 2 are. Infantry accuracy, but reload speed down by 5%. Meticulous, noble. Officer command radius increased in morale. That zealous, charge, fire damage. Well, I'm more of a firepower, especially for my infantry, so we will do that. So now he has orderly, stamina, and veterancy gain improvements, timely reload speed, so they reload faster, movement speed faster, and now more accuracy. So plus 10% reload speed, minus 5%, so we have a 5% overall improvement of reload speed above and beyond. Oh, we could do a second one. Okay. Would skip these if we don't like one. Flanking fire damage, melee damage. Cavalry officer. Well, he does have a cavalry unit, but savage. We're going to skip these. So, which leaves the slot open. We still will need to take the time to earn another one, but leaves the slot open if we don't like our options here. Okay, well that's good. Now, we do need to see about picking up more troops. So let's head north here. I'm guessing there's going to be another town up on the map up here. That garrison there. We don't really want to. Okay, there we go. Okay, well, food is cheap, so we'll get some more food. Get 1,000 more men and some more ammo to things. There we go. And in the town square, since we cannot equip these, we will sell these. Those, and we'll get rid of the worn muskets and the other worn muskets. Okay, so that'll be good, and we'll close this. And since the food is cheap, let's get some more since we got more money. Okay, so now let's head towards this outpost. So as you could tell from what I've been monologuing about, not ranting, but just, going on about, I think we are heading towards... No. I'm going to revise that. It's not that I think. I know. And we're not heading towards. We are going through, like I say, a new human revolution. Both reality and the new realities. And here's another story. We have a very nice religious holiday, though it's not overly religious, here in America called Thanksgiving. And it's where we give thanks for everything, for being alive, for the benefits of our lives, what we're thankful for. And there is a religious. It's not, you don't go to church, you don't, particularly pray or anything other than just generally giving thanks, and can very well be thanks to God. It doesn't, it could, but it just, you can be an atheist and you're giving thanks for family, friends, life, the benefits that you see, even if you're going through hardships. And I have one of my cousins. She's a drug pusher. Well, she used to be a drug pusher. She's now she trains drug pushers. Now I say this, and it's very, very true and very correct. Now she pushes drugs onto doctors, so she works for big pharma. And she was explaining how much AI is helping in her work, and how in a day, I'm paraphrasing and I'm getting this wrong, but basically in a day, she got a week's worth of work done in using the AI, because she had some data, creating a training course, including PowerPoint type slides, creating the whole thing. And she was able to talk, or she was both able to put in documents that already existed, as well as to talk into the computer, and then have the computer generate the training course, and then she edited it. But what would have taken her, say, a week to do. And she was explaining, but we're hiring more people that she's needing to train, because they're finding that you need. I'm not going to go into it because I'm not even sure. Right, I know she's mentioned it, but which big pharma she works for. But a newish medicine that does stuff that there's not really good specialists already out there, so it's doing a lot of educating the doctors about the subject. So, and I said, well, yeah, and they're going to use the AI to reduce the staffing requirements. Oh, no, they're not. No, they are. No, and she's explained. No, we're hiring more people. We're just using this so that I create this training course. Okay, well, I didn't want to argue with her. It's Thanksgiving. I wasn't trying to, create a family fight here. What she doesn't realize is that, and she, in a day, she created a day's training course, And yeah, it took a day to create, or a good chunk of a day or whatever, to create a training course for the day, for like a week-long training thing, because, it's going to be in several parts. But would have taken her a week to do it. Yes, the AI is going to mean that company is going to hire less people. Instead of having her sit, and she works mostly out of her home, sit at her home for a week at that computer creating that course, for like one day, so let's say it's a 4-day course, and spend a month creating that course. She does it in 4 days, so that then she can get back to training the other people. What she doesn't realize is, by doing this and other subsequent things, is maybe not her, and she doesn't, I don't necessarily think, has like special talents, but she does have experience. So maybe they're not going to fire her, but by creating this training course that didn't exist before, and relying and creating it to such a level, they don't need her to give the course. Okay? What they need now is now that they've created this training course, somebody can sit at their computer and watch the course, read the course, read the text and watch and listen to, a AI voice the course. They don't need her to do as much training. Now they'll probably still have, because there's still useful human content, but they'll have her as a trainer instead of four of her, four other people, four total people out being trainers. So the AI might mean for the near future, next 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, won't reduce staff, but it will keep them from having to grow staff. And by having her create these training courses, that goes into the AI. So the next thing that someone will do will take that information that she's put into the computer, into the AI, that they will now have an AI-based support for the doctors or the nurses or whoever that's potentially prescribing these drugs or whatever and things, so that instead of somebody going as often to the, there's still maybe somebody going to the doctor's office, because this is, again, there's just a few of you out here watching. Back in the past, back in the 90s, when digital magazines and whatnot started to come out, well, just on digital, it's on your computer. You go on the interwebs and you see the stuff. But studies showed that, especially for trade magazines, whether it's medical trade or industrial technology, just got here the Modern Machine Shop, which was sent to me for free, that they found that if they have that published online, even if the people know that it exists, they don't necessarily see it. But by it coming into being mailed to you, and if you have an interest in it, because you have a machine shop, you start leafing through it. Sure, there are articles, and some of them you may read, but you'll also see ads for, a new machine tool or a new oil to oil your machine up or whatever it is, that you wouldn't see because you wouldn't look through it if it's just online. So we are still human in that we're not purely a digital interaction. You give us something physical to look at, to see, to work with. So humans, yes, they will still having somebody going around to the doctor's offices, and whether it's pushing the drug, educating them about the drug, its benefits, its downsides, oh well, hey, this is good, but if they're taking this other drugs, don't give them this thing because there's a conflict. Because as much as we want to hate on big pharma, they also don't want to be sued if so if they know of a conflict with drugs, they honestly do want to warn people about that. They still want to push their drugs. And I know some people are, against all of that, and I'm not saying that there aren't problems with it, but, but the staffing levels, meaning the person that goes around to, the doctor's offices in a city, let's say it's not a huge city, not in Los Angeles, a huge city, but it's a decent sized city. So let's say they have two people, they divide the city up in half the doctor's offices and into each person, and they go around. But when somebody there has a staff, somebody on the staff there has a question about the drug, instead of calling the number of the person who, or they may still call because they may give out their personal cell number or something, but not get anybody on that because that person's busy talking to somebody else, or whether on the phone or in person. So they have this other number for info about the drug that they can call that will be an AI. Whether they try to disguise it as a person or not, that's another question. But you have a question. What do you? Oh, you have a question about this drug. Well, press 5 or say 5, and then say your question out. And then the AI will listen to the audio, because it'll get beyond the touch screen. Press option 1, option 5, option whatever. It'll get in there, and you'll ask your question, and then the AI will take the information from this course and other information all together, and then come up with that answer. So instead of having to have enough representatives out there individually running around and have enough time to field these questions, or having a phone bank somewhere, which doesn't have to be in this modern sense, which is great. Everybody sitting in one room with somebody looking over your shoulder, and you're just answering it. You could be sitting at your home and having a computer in a remote location. As you click off from one call, wait 20 seconds, 30 seconds or whatever, and then feed you another call in, and have a person there who looks through a book for the questions and eventually educates themselves so that they can answer more and more out of their own memory. Is there a conflict between drug X and drug Y, kind of thing, but put it down so that they hire less and less people to have the AI handle it. So this is how Toilet Reading is a Lost Art learned so much news, economy, cars, because of the bathroom reading. Well, you're absolutely right about that, but I think a lot of people now sit on their phones, which could be playing a game, Candy Crush or something simple like that, or it can be watching YouTube videos, which you could still learn about stuff. But you're absolutely right that we do have certain, tactile interactions. Because a book, people misuse language, and that's fine. I'm not complaining about it, but we do. A book can be many things. But what we often refer to a book is a codex. Because traditionally there were 3 types of books. A scroll, which is a long piece of paper rolled around, normally like a wooden round piece of wood, whether you want to call it a dowel, a pole, or whatever, but not a long pole, but you know what I mean, a short thing that you would wrap it around it, and you would unscroll it and read it. That was a very common type of book. The other common type of book was the roll, in which you had it wrapped around 2 pieces of wood or some other thing, but wood, I'm sure, was heavily common, and you would roll it so that you were looking at like a page at a time, and so as you unrolled it from one piece of wood, you would roll it onto the other one. And there's only one common book that is still done as a roll, and that is the Torah, at least in the ceremonial in the synagogues. That is a roll. But those are the 2 most common types of books out there. And then there was this underground religion that was also, the other religions also were spread by books too, but did not have fixed locations of worship, partially because it was suppressed, so it needed to be transportable. So they used the very expensive at the time codex, meaning a bound, multiple pages bound in on a spine into what we think of as a book, that you flip through it. And it was very portable, and that eventually gets put into a single codex, but even within it, they often refer to multiple books, what we refer today as the Bible. But it was early on, for the first about 400 years, it was multiple books, and they were often smaller, multiple codexes, and they were smaller, and that way people could carry them and move them around. I do believe that's very much why the Christian scriptures were done as a codex, because a complete book might be on multiple scrolls or multiple rolls, and it would often be put into like a leather made bucket that had a cover on it, that would close. And so you would have to carry this, again, often made out of leather to protect it, but you would carry this bucket around, or you would have, on a wall with a bunch of niches to put things. So you would put a collection of scrolls into one location that might be, something tight around it to keep the 4 or 6 or whatever together. And you would take those off and you go sit at your table in a room. But if you were going to move it anywhere outside of your library, and library is another misused word. It doesn't mean the building, it means the collection of books. The library building is the building in which the library is held in, or the library room is the room in which the library is in. So the codex was exponentially, and I don't know exactly, more expensive than a roll or a scroll. And yes, often, though not always, poorer people were the Christians, but it just needed to be portable and easy to move around and sort of protected. And if you make a codex right, especially in those times, you very well may wear out the pages flipping them, but if you give yourself enough margin, you can cut off where they've worn off, and then, put new sets of holes and on it to, rebind it. So you can, because the page itself, the great bulk of the page, when it's being flipped, is not being stressed. It's just near the spine. So eventually, obviously, we get to, the medieval world. The more and more books are codexes to, into the, up to at least the mid, and then past that into the 60s and 70s of the 20th century, into the 1900s, most books were codexes. And then nowadays you can have books that are PDF files as an EPUB and other sorts of files, or could be HTML files that are a book, purely digital, or audiobooks, meaning somebody has, it could be obviously now a computer reading it into audio files that have audiobooks, but those are all types of books. So technology is going to change. And as we continue to see this happening, and it's already happened, and I was just so I'm going to use his sort of more YouTube friendly name, Overlord DVD. If you know who he is, he's a somewhat flamboyant commentator on pop culture. They're like, and I was watching their thing earlier this week, and they're bemoaning, Hollywood's bemoaning, and he's bemoaning all these closing downs of movie theaters. And, they're blaming COVID, and they're blaming bad movies for this happening. And yes, those are real factors. I have not gone to a movie theater since Rogue One. That was actually a decent, not great, not to the level of the first 6 Star Wars movies, but it was a decent Star Wars movie. I have not gone since then to the movie theater because there's nothing that has interested me enough to want to go sit in the theater. And that's before COVID. So yeah, the quality of movies is going down, but it's also the technology. I'm picturing the movie, but I can't remember the name. Starring Tony Randall. It was done back in the 60s. And movie theaters were like, oh my God, we're being, TV's coming along and people aren't going to be coming. What do we do? And that's really put the final, because for quite some time, they still made movies in black and white. Because you go back to 1939, and Gone with the Wind is made in Technicolor. But most of the films that were made in black and white. Now I'm talking, not just junk films, throwaway cheap things, but expensive movies, the Maltese Falcon and other things that are meant to be big hits were still made in black and white because of the expense of making it in color. And it's not just making it in color, but making all the color prints to go to all the theaters was expensive. Well, it now is, and we can look at like the movie Young Frankenstein, it's now an art house type thing to make it in black and white for some reason, because it is not any cheaper to make it in black and white than color. Well, what really does finally put the nail to black and white movies is the TV. And he interrupts the movie that's going along, there's a sort of a comedy, whatever. And I'm picturing the movie. I can't remember the name of it. And about halfway through the movie, he interrupts the movie. And he goes, well, you're used to getting these interruptions in your... Hello, yeah, Jim Nuska. I want a great 7-Year War movie. Barry Lyndon, great Kubrick film. Well, I would say the first like 15, 20 minutes really is a great 7 Years War movie. But after that, it really sort of becomes boring, at least to me. So the start of it, yes, Barry Lyndon. And I do know the movie you're talking about and the battle scenes, absolutely. There's another 7 Years War movie that comes from a very bleak tradition of literature, in which there aren't necessarily happy endings and maybe all sort of sad endings, is Last of the Mohicans, which is a book, and I did try to read the book. I was reading a lot of 18th century fiction and historical fiction and whatnot at one point. But it is sort of a bleak book. But the movie Last of Mohicans is another, because it's 7 Years War. I mean, it's the French and Indian War, which doesn't 100% line up with the 7 Years War, because some of it sort of started before, but it's definitely 7 Years War. And it's much more of a war action movie. So check out, if you haven't, Last of the Mohicans. I will argue on that. Still a good film, but you're a Kubrick fan. Yes. I just, because I don't know. It just slows down, and it's been 20 plus years since I've seen it, so it may just be I was more interested in looking for battles, and they just didn't. Yeah, not a lot. Yeah, but I do say that Last of the Mohicans, the movie, is set in the 7 Years War. It's very much, and it was written after the 7 Years War, but it was written sort of in the 18th century. So it gives you very much, if you're looking to learn about how people thought then, it gives very much the bleakness, the idea that hey, everybody, we're going to go to the New World. Let's get on a ship. Hey, 1 in 5 of us won't even make it to the next continent. We'll die on the way there. And once we get there, and we go there, get there, hey, of the 4 people that get off the ship, for every one that died, another one of us is going to die. So we're going to have 25% casualties just there. And hey, we're going to have lots of children because probably half of them are going to die before they get to adulthood. Yay! So expectations were a lot different than what we have today, at least in the modern or Western world. but expectations may have not changed in some areas of the third world, but modern medicine, um, all of the black people in places like Rhodesia and South Africa, oh my God, white people, they've oppressed us, they've been oppressing us. Well, when white people showed up in Rhodesia, there were a lot more white people as a percentage than there was later on. Because from the 1940s through to like the 1970s, modern medicine kept so many of those black people alive and got them to adulthood, and modern farming. And also they weren't allowed to butcher each other, because there was a lot of butchering going on, because particularly in Rhodesia, but also in parts of South Africa, the more indigenous people liked the white people because they protected them from the other lesser indigenous people, meaning different conquering black tribes that were conquering each other. And the white people came down and, yeah, they took all the best land and all of whatever, but they didn't slaughter everybody like the different tribes would slaughter each other and enslave each other so much. And so that there were factions that very much liked white rule, because they realized there wasn't white rule, there would be this black or this other black tribe rule over us. So sure, they may have the same skin tone as us, but trust me, there are physical differences, then they can spot them much easier. Is what, like we can spot the difference between, I don't know, a Frenchman and a Swede more likely. They can spot, they're all dark skinned and have, curly hair, but they can spot structural differences of some of these tribes much better than at least Americans or Europeans. Maybe the Rhodesians who actually grew up there can spot the tribal genetic differences. But, and so it wasn't so much of, oh, hey, we don't want oppression. No, it's who are we going to be oppressed by? Well, these white people, they're oppressing us, certainly, but damn, it's a hell of a lot better than to be oppressed by these other tribes. So it may have not been, they may have not seen it as fair or even just, but it was the best deal that's going. And, since the whites left, they're being oppressed pretty brutally again. So they're going like, damn, the white rule wasn't so bad. Maybe it was the good old days. So yeah, so their expectations may still be pretty bleak, but modern medicines that are stopping, tetanus and other, injuries, like if you get in the 18th century, you get significantly cut, including maybe shaving or something, you can die of an infection. Yeah, you can still do that in a modern day sense, but probably not. You're probably going to take some antibiotics and be just fine. And I'm not talking die of, blood loss from a bayonet stabbing into your guts. I'm just talking about what relatively, I'm sure it's going to hurt, you're going to bleed a bunch, but a slice, a cut, whether it's in battle or just, in and around life, that you could get infected and die. Some of the reasons why I feel very blessed to be here now is because of modern medicine. I was going to sort of get there and I never did earlier on. The modern medicine is why, some of the reasons I don't want to be living in the 18th century. Electricity and the things that electricity gives you, like computers, and indoor plumbing is another really, really good benefit, which as part of that is clean water with indoor plumbing. It's why I'm glad I'm not living in the 18th century. Now, we could sort of merge the best of the 18th century in with some of these other stuff. I think I would appreciate it more than some of this modern stuff that we have. So yeah, definitely if you want another 7 Years War movie, go check out the Last of the Mohicans. There's also Jamnuska and anybody else, 2 other 7 Years War movies that Um, one I really liked, and one I thought was okay. Um, One is a bit more 7 Years' War. One is a bit more a little earlier, and the movies are. And why did I just immediately start blanking on? Uh, The Master of Ballantrae. It's also a book by Walter Scott. And both of the movies I'm discussing are both are remakes. The one I like best stars Errol Flynn, the Master of Ballantrae. Um, Starts in the Jacobite Rebellion of 1745-46, but particularly the more modern remake of it, which is actually closer to the book, um, does sort of cover into the 7 Years' War, including some of the 7 Years' War kind of stuff going on in India. So if you want a sort of 7 Years' War, sort of end of the Jacobites war, I mean, just sort of the opening phases are sort of the Jacobite War, but goes on, is the Master of Ballantrae. If you're looking for another or two of them period movies out there, so you're right. There's not a lot of 7 Years' War movies, but there are a few. So if you haven't seen the Master of Ballantrae or read the book again by Walter Scott, um, you can check those out as well, so that they do exist. So yes, okay. The position, okay, Your Grace, the position no longer held. We found a palisade breached and the garrison wholly destroyed. Me. Um, Ash still smolders in the barracks, and no man left behind breeze. There's nothing here now but rotting corpses. What should we do? Search the ruins, find weapons, slim chance of 90% building collapse. Encounter is resolved. We'll take the slim chance. Okay. So we have socket bayonets and we have land pattern muskets. Okay, which are English muskets, the land pattern. Long land pattern, short land pattern. Land pattern refers to the army as opposed to naval, and what we would commonly call it the Brown Bess today. But the long, and like you say, land pattern, and in the 7 Years' War, it would only be the long land pattern. Starting in, or as you're coming into the American Revolution and the follow-on war, because there's also war eventually ends up in Europe, mostly around the Siege of Gibraltar and some other stuff, and then down in the Caribbean. It goes on for a few years after the war with the Americans is functionally stopped. They're still, the French and the English are still fighting. You're starting to get into the short land pattern, which stays in service through to the end of the Napoleonic era. But starting in the Napoleonic era, you're starting to see the India pattern, which is a more simplified version of it. The long land pattern and the short land pattern are virtually the same gun, just one's a bit shorter. The India one maybe shortens it a bit from the short land pattern, but more just simplifies manufacturing details. Makes it easier to manufacture. See, I know too much about even this. And von Schweinhund, good to see you here. Last of the Mohicans, considering music and the plot, in my opinion, one of the most emotional 5 minutes in movie history at the end. Yes, it's very emotional. Like I say, it's a bit, if you look at something like The Last of the Mohicans and you compare it to the Hornblower, or any of the Hornblower novels by, and again, I'm C.S. Forester, who was writing those books, leading up to and during World War II. He was an English writer who had left England for America, and being a writer, but writing a very hopeful, very sort of idealistic hero in Hornblower, often in a world that is still, Napoleonic / 18th century, early 19th century, however you want to say it. But he's, sort of this upstanding, non-corrupt, always trying his best, always sort of in a meritocracy kind of thing. So you're very much looking at it at a mid. The stories are very much written in a mode of the mid 20th century, talking about the end of the 18th century and the Napoleonic period, as opposed to, like I say, The Last of the Mohicans, that was actually written in the 18th century. So the whole tone and temperament are different of things. So yes, it is. Haven't seen those. We'll check them out. Yes. So check out the Master of Ballantrae. Master of Ballantrae, the original Errol Flynn, I think, is in the 1950s. One of his later films. The other one, I think, was more made for TV and maybe even a two-parter or something in, I think, the 90s, but much more closer to Walter Scott's original story, and which the hero is something of an anti-hero in the second one, more so than in the first of those things. And right offhand, I'm not coming up with other 7 Years War movies right offhand, but like I say, they do exist. If you're interested enough, just not. I mean, I can come up with other 18th century movies, but if you're looking at just the 7 Years War, okay. So you have plenty of time here. We have a slum back here. Sometimes the slums can extend the clock, so we're going to go see what we can see at this slum. We need to grow our army. Okay, Your Grace, the people here have endured much and speak with wary cadence of those who have known many campaigns. They ask for little, but in exchange for coin, they're willing to part with knowledge of the land. Some know locations of every village in the regions, having traversed these paths since childhood. Others have tracked the comings and goings and passings of convoy and may point out nearby encampments. Pay for local rumors, pay for regional intelligence. All village on the map. Okay, leave. I think we'll just do this 60 because we're supposed to do some of that. Okay, so now we see some of the smaller villages that we didn't see before. Okay, let's go check out this encampment. Now, other than getting the 4 and the 5 things, and I really have not, because I've not had artillery and wanted to besiege and have this clock move too far in besieging one of these fortresses, I've not dealt with that. Okay. River crossing, sir. Our scouts report an enemy force encamped across the river. Sounds something like Washington crossing the Delaware there. Okay, today marks a festival. Oh, hey, we're even going closer. This is Washington. It marks a festival of some kind. The men appear to be in high spirits, drunks and unguarded, wholly unfit for battle. We may attempt to cross the river now and take them unaware. Improvised rafts or dinghies can be fashioned, though the risk is not small. We may be spotted midstream, or worse, lose men in the current. Should we invest coin in sturdier craft, or our chances improved? If an engineer is with us, he may be able to ensure the boats hold together, but even then our movements may be detected. So, moderate chance. Construct sturdier craft, which costs thalers. 1 day passes. Likely. We don't have an engineer in our group yet, or we can leave. Well, I think we'll pay the thalers and do this. And now another, again, not 7 Years War, but the American Revolution, a very, very good movie. It was made for TV, called The Crossing. And it is, I think, a rather accurate portrayal of Washington crossing the Delaware and attacking the Hessians, and showing that very much in the correct sort of battles and styles. And I won't spoil, I mean, the Americans win, but beyond that, I won't spoil the details of it. But they talk about all this stuff, and it's sort of this sort of setup in that they are, um, crossing the river at night, and do they get across? Are they spotted? If they're spotted, how does the battle go, and all of that stuff. And they sort of detail it out very well. So I would also check out The Crossing if you're looking for 18th century sort of action. And hello, David Fletching, my friend Strongarm. Good to see you here. Okay, so we'll do this. And they even make it, the officers standing up just like the painting of Washington with the other guys holding the flag. Boats are launched at first dark and the column crosses in silence. Oars are muffled. Engineers kept the craft tight. And the current was mastered with guidemen on the ropes. We landed above the camp, seized the pickets before they could cry alarm, formed a line in the trees, and at the signal, tents were rushed. The enemy with heavy with drink broke without order. Now this, without the river part, this also sounds like, not Goliad, the last battle of Texas independence. I forget the name of that battle, which, although doesn't happen in the 18th century, is still a very 18th century style war, in that they're using mostly muskets with flintlocks and that kind of thing. Guns and colors were taken, officers secured in their shirts, meaning not shirts in this time period would be recognizable by modern people, but generally speaking, their shirts go down to their knees. And so you very well may be and let's say shirts and a broad body laid down arms. Yeah, so you may be meaning jumping out of their bed or their sleeping roll or whatever, on the ground. But they're not wearing their coats. They may not be wearing their waistcoats, or their vests is sort of a more modern term for it, or their breeches. They may be just in their shirts and jumping up. So they're not like naked, but they're not properly dressed. That would sort of be, it's sort of what you might think of as a nightshirt, which definitely goes maybe a bit lower, but knees are a bit long for shirts, but not terribly long for the period, meaning, maybe halfway down your thighs really is a bit more realistic for the idea of shirts then. So our losses were light, and the men were kept in their ranks. In the withdrawal, we held. Okay, so we captured a bunch, so we got reservists, and we got Neustadt muskets and cuirassier swords. So we're going to go into camp. We're going to look here. Well, cheese is nice, morale and stamina, which so 8 and 8, and that's 6 and 12. So I guess the lightning bolts, is that like shock or something? I don't know. Or this, I think we'll swap that out for a better melee weapon. Okay, and we also have, we're using the Frisian horses, which more melee damage and movement speed. Morale and movement speed, but a bit more movement speed. Here are a lot more movement speed and stamina. So I'm going to save the horses for other cavalry units. Okay, these guys have all have good bayonets, so we don't need those just yet. I don't like these inaccurate muskets. So 20 and 25. So let's get more accurate muskets going on. So there we go. We have a spare officer. Okay, so let's leave camp. Friendly markets, drained recruitment, stolen cattle, and supply. Oh, no. Don't really want to move the clock that much. I was more just wanting to look around and seeing Trade Hub items cost plus 20%. Commander's outbreak, supply shortage. We really don't want to head there. Let's head here. Okay. What I want to do is spend the 300, get another battalion. We're going to put this officer in charge of the 2nd Brigade. He is stalwart and he is elusive. Okay. So, Freikorps recruits, Prussian landsmen. Okay, 500, 300. Let's get this and this. Okay, so back into camp. Okay. Now, these guys have worn muskets and so do these. So, and I'm going to these guys will give these muskets. I'm going to go back here and take away their good muskets. Well, we're going to get these. And these guys will get those. And we'll give these guys the haversack. There we go. Now our army is bigger. We need to find some more outposts, not garrisons that we may need to attack. Outposts. There's a battlefield. We do need to find 2 more battlefields. That looks like an outpost. Large army, we want to avoid that for the moment. Ah, okay, an encampment. Okay, Night Raid, Your Grace. An enemy encampment lies ahead. Its tents dimly lit, guards posted. A swift assault under cover of darkness could catch them unprepared. If we hesitate, they will have time to muster their full strength by morning. You must decide, do we strike now or wait and face a proper army on the morrow? Strike under cover of darkness. Wait for the storm to roll in, 4 days passing. Well, I don't want to have 4 days on this clock, so we could just leave, but we're gonna risk it. Your Grace, our column moved in silence and struck before the pickets could cry alarm, which is much better than what happened in the Jacobite army in 1746. Sentries were taken, the first tents overrun, the enemy rousted too late to form a line, officers were seized. You modern people do not understand how difficult a night attack is, because the night is black, people. I know a few of you might live in the countryside and go out at night, but obviously just because most people live in cities, they live in a city that has street lights and other lights that are on all the time. And trying to move a body of men is not just 1 or 2 people trying to move through somewhere at night. Oh, and you're not using flashlights or other lanterns or things, because that would, 1 or 2 lanterns or torches might not be enough to really give anybody an alarm, because it could just be a couple of your guys that had, either stayed out a little too late or um, gone out foraging, because armies at this time, they would, whether they're trying to raid the local farm or trying to find some wild animals or something to acquire. Not just hunt, but trap or whatever. So, people are out and about. So not everybody in a camp is always there. So people do come and go. And that's why you have sentries. So a few lanterns, 2 or 3 lanterns, 2 or 3 torches. Yeah, but if you're talking hundreds of men moving, you need more than that. So if everybody has lanterns and lights or a certain percentage of them, you'd see this big group of crawling, fireflies in the distance coming at you, and that would alarm. So you've got to move in darkness, in true darkness. And it is so easy to get lost. So easy to, even though you're just following the guy in front of you, if the guy, or if your battalion, your regiment loses too much contact, they may start veering off in a different direction. So half of your army is in one location and half of your army is in the other location. And neither of the locations may be where the enemy is. So, night marches are, and attacks. But you only do night marches for something important, which may be, of course, to avoid it. You've spotted the army, the enemy army, and they spotted you, and it gets too dark, so you set up, the sort of classical thing that did happen in reality, but more maybe in stories. You set up the campfires and everyone's there, and the campfires, and then, at midnight everybody gets up and quietly walks away, leaving the campfires burning, and so they disappear because the enemy's gone, oh yeah, they're just over there, sort of see the firelight through the trees or on the other hill, or whatever, and you disappear in the middle of the night. So when they wake up in the morning, you're long gone, and you're able to, retreat to where you got a river crossing. You get across the river, and there's a bridge or a ford and whatever. And even if the army's 3 times as strong as you, trying to push across a bridge, a few at a time, relatively speaking, you could slaughter them. So yeah, so you're only doing those kind of things. Losses on our part were light, and the withdrawal was made before dawn. Okay, so we got cuirassier swords and socket bayonets. Just what we didn't need. Let's head towards this other outpost here. Oh, convoy. We want a convoy. Convoy normally means goodies. Okay, Your Grace, our Scots decided to guard a convoy moving at speed along the southern road. Several wagons bearing arms and munitions. A patrol rides close behind, so we shall have time to seize only one wagon before the rest escape. We must choose quickly. Shall we take firearms, secure the artillery piece, or make off with the specialty ammunition? So, capture 2 weapons, capture cannons. We already have 1 set of cannons, but we don't have an artillery unit. Capture specialized ammunition. We'll do the specialized ammunition. Okay, it's 4 cannon. Okay, what's that? Canister. Could have been grape shot. Okay, fast at digging trenches. Yes. Can I post a link for the incredible I watched back in high school I found on YouTube? Yes, you may. You may post the link. Arno, if you're around, you want to approve the link or whatever, or post it in such a way, with spaces or something, so that people can figure it out if it doesn't look at it. But I do approve. So Arno can check that out if you would, to make sure it gets one way or another posted. Okay, great. Peter Watkins, 1964 documentary. Oh, there. If you're talking not documentary, and it took years for me to find it. Now it's probably digitally out there. A TV show about the Battle of Culloden, which is the last real battle of the Jacobite risings of 1745 to 46. And it's a really depressing, because it's made to be depressing, look at the battle from the Jacobites and how bleak these people's lives are, but it does cover the battle. It's just like a 40-minute thing from a TV show done back in either the 60s or 70s. It's in black and white, back when British television was still mostly black and white. But if you're interested in that, but I'm going to come up here and click that link so that I can. Oh, that is. Okay, so that is the Culloden Jacobite docudrama. Yes. Yeah, I'm going to bookmark it. There we go. So yes, and I didn't even know that sounded something was familiar with Peter Watkins. I wasn't quite sure. So yes, and that's also very much set, in obviously 45 to 46. Oh, and we were trying, because I was involved back at in the late 80s, early 90s in a Jacobite reenactment group out here in California. Well, here I'm now in Arizona, my secret mountain base, but when I lived in California. And there was also, we were in contact with other Scottish reenactment groups, including some that were involved in the Renaissance fairs and other things. So there was a bunch of people, and we were all wanting to watch this thing that we had heard about, and we'd seen some stills. Well, I was able to get a hold of, I forget exactly how I did. I got a hold of a 3.5 3/4 of an inch video cassette tape of it. Now that is a broadcast video cassette tape. That's what they used to use. Where your VHS tapes, which probably some of you are old enough to remember, is a 1/2 inch tape. So I got a hold of this thing. I forget how, maybe I just was even borrowed it. I forget how I got it. But because I had been working in some television and stuff, so I knew some people. And so I was able to get this thing, and I got it and dubbed over to 1/2 inch video cassette tapes. And then I had 2 VCRs, which back in the day was not super rare, but not common either, set up. And so I made, 10 plus dubs of the, so we're going from somebody's pretty decent, television copy of it from, and I think I still may even have the stuff somewhere, if the cassette tapes are still in good shape. I'm not sure if I still have the 3/4 inch cassette tape or not, but you're definitely stepping down in quality from 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch. And then I was, from my sort of 1/2 inch master, I was making the dub. So it wasn't dub of a dub of a dub of a dub, but it was a dub, and made multiple dubs, maybe about 10 or so. And I charged people just a minor fee, but because even though I knew people, I still had to pay like $100 or more to get the dubbing service to, from 3.5 inch to 1/2 inch. And it was just, and video cassette tapes, in which I don't know if it still is, but because it's old technology, but audio cassette tapes that you guys, again, may be old enough to remember, and video cassette tapes, more than half of their cost, and I remember when they were costly, but even when cassette tapes, half of their cost was purely bullshit. And it wasn't, THX or whoever's making the cassette tapes, that they were just putting up the cost to make more money. No, what it was, and again, I don't know if it's still in effect, but the both initially for the audio cassette tapes, it was the music industry, and later for the VHS tapes, once they were coming out in the Betamax, is that these were presumably, and of course they were, aiding piracy. So, like if you bought a cassette tape for, blank cassette tape for, I don't know, like $2 or something, or whatever it was, I forget how much it was. Something like half of that, like $1 of that, would go into a fund that then would be broken up for the music industry. Maybe not so much for the artists, but for the publishers, and then for the TV and movie people, because, again, whether copying off TV or renting or buying a movie and then making multiple copies of it, there was a whole big slush fund of money that we were being charged, that they didn't publicize, that we were being charged for these blank cassette tapes to sort of help cover piracy expense. So, yeah, it's an interesting side thing. But so I got a hold of, this was before the internet, before YouTube, before any of that stuff. We got a hold of, and I'm sure, I know a few other people would make copies of that. I would give them, sell them, and I didn't really make money off of it. I just sort of recouped some of my cost, or all of my cost, maybe a little bit of money, but it wasn't like, making a pizza or two's worth of money. It wasn't really like I made bucks off of this. I just sort of recovered my cost, including the cost of buying the cassette tape, the VHS tape. But I do know that a few of the people that bought my tapes then made some more copies of this from my copy for other friends and whatnot. But yeah, I did sort of distribute that movie out, or that docudrama out to people. And I'm forgetting, Preble. It's very much that whole docudrama, I was been trying to remember the name, is very much, or they very much use, John Preble's book Culloden as the premise for that docudrama, which I did many, many years ago. I read Preble's book on Culloden, and it's in my Jacobite book collection, my library of that. I got a bunch of books covering just the Jacobites, including at least one that's over 250 years old, a bunch that are, were written back in 1890 or 1910, that sort of period. There was sort of a bit of a revival, publishing a bunch of books then, so that are now well over 100 years old. I mean, like 20 plus books over 100 years old on the Jacobites, the 18th, and that's obviously right in the middle of the 18th century, and it's sort of driving a lot of the battles and bigger conflicts as well, at least in Western Europe. So that's why I know a lot about this time period. Okay, General, the volunteers at this post report they stand ready to sell their lives dearly should it serve the greater cause. They have volunteered to strike at the enemy's command from behind, knowing well the risks. We may dispatch them at once. Their actions could hinder the enemy's headquarters lightly or perhaps more if fortune favors them. Okay, we can expend a bunch of ammunition. 2 days past delays the HQ by 2 weeks, and which should be delaying that. Lesser ammunition by 1 week. It would be best to consolidate forces if we wanted, but we right now have 4,000 reservists, so we really don't need more people. And so we're going to go with, takes 2 days, but delay it by 2 weeks. And we don't have lots of ammo, but we have enough that we can probably deal with things. So you can see that sort of click back a little bit. But let's go save this. New, let's play 02. Well, they don't do spaces in this save. Right, okay. And so we've saved this. Good. And I want to thank you all for hanging out with me. Jamnuska, Arno, Strongarm / David Fletching, Von Schweinhound, Turin Low. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for listening to my, well, not rants or raves, but monologues today on the changing of humanity. And we have fears on that. what was it, the Beltane Jihad, in the Dune series, in which humanity rises up against thinking machines and bans thinking machines, so that eventually, mostly through the spice, they mutate humans into computers, or Terminator, in which one hive mind of a thinking machine takes over and threatens humanity. Elon Musk, for quite some time, was trying to fight against AI, but he comes to a realization, now whether he's correct or not is another thing. But instead of fighting the AI, creating AIs to balance out other AIs, because realizing whether it's the US or the Russians, and trust me, people, the Russians are behind on a lot of things, but they also have reserves of deep knowledge that, shall we say, that, yeah, they're behind, but don't count them out. But definitely the Chinese, which are much ahead of the Russians, are going to try, but they're still behind us. The Dutch company, I forget, maybe Arno could supply us with the name, that makes the machines that make computer chips, the silicon wafers, they use Zeiss mirrors, not so much lenses, but mirrors to focus it, that they get from Germany, and they make the high-end machines. The highest end machines are made in the Netherlands. That they got a call from one of their company, or one of the companies in China that made the machine. Oh, the machine's broken. You got to come out and fix it. I don't know the end of the tale, but okay. Well, yeah, we've got, it's part of our service. We'll come out and fix the machine, and whatnot, make sure it's running. And they come out and they take a look at it, and the guys there and working in China informed the Dutch company, the machine isn't broken. It's not working because somebody opened the machine up. Not just like take the side panels off, but went into the black boxes and opened them up. And the Dutch company makes it so you can't open the boxes and put them back together to have them work. You need a new black box. They might be able to recycle some of the components on the black box, but you need a new black box. So it was like, oh, China had completely disassembled one of these machines, whatever model, and then tried to put it back. And it was an older machine, like a 5 or 10 year older machine. It wasn't the newest thing. Philips, I don't think so, David. It's the one Dutch company that does the very high end stuff, but maybe it's Philips. I don't know for sure. And to try to get the information out to be able to copy the machine. Well, supposedly they can see now what was inside of it, but a lot of technical details in opening the machine are ruined. Some of the more true details of the stuff, and putting the stuff back together, it doesn't work. I don't think the Dutch, the team, fix it. And that's it, Arno. That's ASML. That's, whatever that exact. I know it's an acronym, whatever it stands for, AMSL. I don't think they fixed the machine. I think they go, oh, you broke it, and left. I think that, but I never got a clear. It was a YouTube video that was covering one of these China, maybe even China Observer, or one of the YouTube channels that watches China. But they did cite their sources, their reports, not just somebody spewing the stuff off. And even though I didn't go double check their sources, I believe, since they're doing it. So ASMR is I think a different thing, isn't it? But yeah. So that China still isn't up to the leading edge of the West, including, and now America also makes some of these machines that make the machines, but not as good as the Dutch. It was the best mirrors because it's beyond lenses. I mean, meaning they're going for a tighter focus of being able to do the stuff is beyond what we can do with lenses. So they use mirrors to focus the light to do the thing. The best ones mirrors come out of Germany, and the best machines that make the wafers, the round sort of wafers that they cut the chips out of. The best ones that make the machines are the Dutch. Now you get low end stuff that Russia can produce, including the machines that make the stuff, are like the chips like in your credit card or whatever. Just primitive, basic, read only chips and whatnot that are, like I say, like in your credit card and then of course there's the reprogrammable magnetic ones that you'll see like for hotel, modern hotel keys that are like a card, that they can, if you keep your card, they can zero, when they zero it out, when you leave, they zero it out. And so you can't go back into your hotel room. And it's just real cheap. That's magnetic. But then things that are a little bit more permanent, like for access badges and whatever, those are pretty low end. And China or Russia can make machines that make those low end and other low end chips. Those are pretty common, but the high end chips are still coming out of Germany, or some of the components are only made in Germany. Some of the high end machines are only made in the Netherlands, but there's other one step down high end machines that are made in the US or made in places like Japan or Taiwan. And then the step down from that are places like China, who make one or two steps down make the machines, but China's trying to match or beat the West, and they still haven't. So, this modern technological revolution with the AI is going to happen, short of whether it's one of these weird space objects that they've seen that are zipping through our solar system, or whether it's, global thermonuclear war or some other, mass bioweapon or something that destroys civilization. Short of destroying civilization, AI and this next generation of computing is here. It's like all the people that used to be involved in, in making, in dealing with horses, whether, to talk about buggy manufacturer, but, the blacksmith that shoed the horses, and that, all your delivery. I remember, I think it was during World War I, there's a photo that a crew of women, of like 3 or 4 women, and you would need 2 women to pick up a block of ice. And these are big blocks of ice, not just a few pounds of ice, but big blocks of ice that were being delivered in a city to different places, because it was before common refrigeration, and they didn't know about refrigeration, but before it was common. And they very well may be using refrigeration to create the blocks of ice, but delivering these big blocks of ice and whatever, being delivered, that were being delivered on wagons towed by horses around cities. Well, those horses need to be, fed every day, even if they're only delivering 5 days a week. They need to be fed. They need to blacksmith. You need people that handle those horses, more than just simply, driving a truck around. So all those jobs disappeared that were dealing with all those horses, to probably at best 20% of the people to maintain the trucks that do the deliveries, or motorized, cabs, because they were horse-drawn cabs prior, but, car cabs, if you will, probably only 20% of the people needed to do that. But, yeah, that meant a lot of jobs disappeared. But by having those trucks and those cabs, they freed up labor to do other things more usefully. So there very well may have been a transition period, and people who had really good skills at blacksmithing don't immediately shift over to good skills at automotive mechanic. So they may be sort of out of a job and are going from a job of a highly skilled, respected, well-paid individual being a blacksmith, to being just sort of a cheap day labor, because the person is older. I mean, I don't mean like ancient, but I mean, 30 plus years old, and trying to retrain them into becoming an auto mechanic or something is just not available or on the card. So he may very well go down from a well-paying blacksmith job to being just a, some sort of guy who delivers ice blocks, from the back of a truck, but, lower paid kind of thing. So yeah, we're definitely going through a stage here that's going to be, the sort of learn to code kind of thing that a lot of people won't be able to do. So there will be negative disruptions, but I don't quite think some of these futurists, including like people like Andrew Yang, who go, oh, mincome, give a minimum income for everybody. I don't quite really think that's the solution. I really don't. And not just on the sort of, Adam Smith, Hayek, and other sort of capitalist ideas, whether it would work economically or not. I think on the human spirit level, I think humans need to have that struggle. It doesn't need to be like a, oh my God, where's my next meal coming from struggle, but the idea that they need a purpose to get that, they need I'm a blacksmith. And now, of course, blacksmiths, if you're willing to take up the job, are in demand. People want blacksmiths. They don't want as many as they had in 1890, but blacksmiths, if you get good and you get a blacksmithy going, you can normally keep yourself well employed. Now, if everybody tried to become blacksmiths, we don't need all of them. We need a few of them for maintaining horseshoes for the few people that have horses, but making other interesting things. Yeah, it's quite useful. But so I don't quite think an auto, everybody gets a minimum income, and then if you want more, and a basic living salary at that kind of thing. But if you want more, you got to go get one of the few jobs available. No, I just think we're going through a change and shift. And so humanity's changing. So like I know I was saying goodbye, but talking more. So thanks, everyone. Be back tomorrow, and I'm going to really try to get more sleep, because I just had trouble getting to sleep last night. That delayed this by about an hour plus. Hopefully I'll be on time. Hopefully, Arno, you won't have to wait for me. I'm going to set my alarm, but whether I'm awake enough to do it. Hopefully start at the 10 o'clock my local time tomorrow for War Thunder. And David, if you're up, if you get up for us, Stonemasons, that's another one. They still, we're redoing and they've completed the rebuild of the Notre Dame in Paris with stonemasons. Oh yeah, stonemasons are in demand. Now, with modern concrete and the ability to cast, decorative, and they don't. I mean, modern, not just Soviet gross, building blocks, but even a lot of modern buildings I dislike. But I love building out of concrete. But concrete doesn't have to look brutalism. Concrete can look and can be formed and can be colored to be all kinds of color. You can do sort of the Maria Theresa yellow or whatever that she did for her plaster. You can cast concrete in that, and you can make it look like, Gothic architectural castings, in concrete. So you don't have to, get out there with hand chisels and hammers and chisel it all out. You can, do it much more economically, and at scale. With concrete castings and other similar sorts of material castings. So you can make things that look beautiful. So, and they can be, somewhat repetitive in that they're not all individually hand done. But still, even if you make 10,000 of something, you spread 10,000 of that over the Western world through Amazon, you're still not going to see it every day, if you know what I mean. Or you'll see yours, your picture frame or your mirror frame or whatever that's, Art Deco. You'll see yours, but you won't see one in every house. It'll be, still sort of rare, but you can make them beautiful and make them, through a factory. but we don't. We make them ugly and plain and whatever. So, but yeah, so stonemasons, again, not as many as you would need prior to concrete, but you still need all that stuff if you're willing to learn the trade. So I think humanity is, like I say, going through a revolution in multiple ways, and that, again, which would be a different revolution. We're either going to have a revolution that pushes us back to some sort of dark ages, post-apocalyptic type situation, or we're coming into this new age. And those people that are fighting it, including unions or whatever, are mistaken. You don't fight it. You try to negotiate your way through the revolution, realizing that it's coming, that Amazon warehouses need a bunch of people today, but are going to become more and more automated. But you'll still need people to lubricate the machinery, to fix the machinery, to get something unstuck, to do some level of cleaning. Some of the cleaning may be done automatically, but they'll still be needing humans. But again, it may go down to 20% or 5% amount of humans in the warehouse. But I just see that as improved productivity in the long run. So yeah, so come back, if, like I say, Strong Arm, if you can get up for our War Thunder stream tomorrow. I don't know. I know it's sort of a different day for you there and whatnot, but love to have you play with us. So yes, so see you all hopefully tomorrow. Sometimes we'll get into deep topics while playing War Thunder, so it's not just, watching tanks explode, but still, it's fun. So see you then.